You're listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Judges 8. Gideon defeats Zebah and Zalmunna. Judges 8 begins with victory, but it ends with disappointment. Gideon has just witnessed God deliver Israel from the Midianites with only 300 men. The Lord made it abundantly clear that the victory belonged to him, not to human strength. And yet, as the chapter unfolds, we see that military success doesn't automatically lead to spiritual faithfulness. The chapter serves as a reminder that God's people need more than deliverance from their enemies. We need transformed hearts. The chapter opens with a conflict between Gideon and the men of Ephraim. They were upset that Gideon hadn't called them earlier to join the battle. Instead of escalating the disagreement, Gideon responded with humility and wisdom. He praised their contribution, and he diffused the tension. Verses 2 and 3 say this, "And he said to them, 'What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you?' Then their anger against him subsided when he said this." Gideon's response demonstrates the value of gracious speech. Rather than defending his own reputation, he sought peace among God's people. Well, after settling this dispute, Gideon continued pursuing the remaining Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna. Although Gideon and his men were exhausted, they refused to quit. Along the way, they asked the cities of Succoth and Penuel for food and assistance, but both cities refused because they doubted that Gideon would succeed. Their response revealed a lack of faith. They were unwilling to stand with God's chosen leader until victory was guaranteed. Gideon promised to return, and after defeating the Midianite kings, he carried out judgment against both cities for their refusal to support Israel during the battle. The chapter repeatedly highlights Gideon's determination. Verse 4 says this, "And Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed over, he and the 300 men who were with him, exhausted yet pursuing." Those three words, exhausted yet pursuing, they capture the perseverance of faith. God's people often find themselves weary. We face disappointments, setbacks, and struggles. And yet, by God's grace, we continue pursuing obedience because our strength ultimately comes from Him. Once Gideon captured Zebah and Zalmunna, he completed the victory God had promised. The Midianite threat that had oppressed Israel for years was finally broken. And the people responded by asking Gideon to become their ruler. In verses 22 and 23, we read this, "Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, 'Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian.' Gideon said to them, 'I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you.'" At first, Gideon's answer sounds exactly right. He recognized that Israel's true king was the Lord. Israel wasn't supposed to place ultimate trust in a human ruler. God himself was their sovereign king. But unfortunately, Gideon's actions soon contradicted his own words. After the victory, Gideon requested gold from the spoil of war, and he used it to create an ephod. An ephod was normally associated with priestly ministry and seeking God's guidance. Well, Gideon placed this object in his hometown, and it became a spiritual snare. Verse 27 says this, "And Gideon made an ephod of it and put it in his city, in Ophrah, and all Israel whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family." Gideon didn't necessarily intend to lead Israel into idolatry, and yet even good intentions can become dangerous when they distract people from wholehearted devotion to God. The people began treating the ephod as an object of misplaced spiritual significance, and their hearts drifted away from the Lord. The chapter then ends on a tragic note. After Gideon's death, Israel quickly abandoned the Lord, and they returned to idol worship. In verses 34 and 35, we read this, "And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hand of all their enemies on every side. And they did not show steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. The pattern that will dominate much of the book of Judges is already visible. God delivers, the people rejoice, and then they forget. Their problem wasn't merely external oppression. Their greatest problem was internal rebellion. And this is where Judges 8 points us toward Jesus. Gideon was a flawed deliverer. God used him mightily, but Gideon couldn't change the hearts of the people. He could defeat Midian, but he couldn't cure Israel's tendency toward idolatry. Even his own life displayed inconsistencies and weaknesses. Well, Jesus is the greater deliverer that Gideon foreshadowed. Like Gideon, Jesus came to rescue his people. But unlike Gideon, Jesus never failed. He never sinned. He never led people astray. He perfectly obeyed his Father in every circumstance. Gideon and his men were exhausted yet pursuing. Well, Jesus also endured weariness during his earthly ministry, and yet he continued his mission all the way to the cross. There he accomplished a far greater victory than the defeat of Midian. Through his death and resurrection, he conquered sin, death, and Satan. Israel needed more than military salvation, and we need more than improved circumstances. We need a Savior who can transform our hearts and reconcile us to the Father. And Jesus does exactly that. Judges 8 reminds us how quickly human leaders disappoint us and how easily our hearts can drift toward lesser things. Even our greatest earthly victories can't satisfy our deepest spiritual needs. But Christ remains faithful, where every other deliverer falls short. When we're weary, we can keep pursuing because he strengthens us. When we're tempted toward idolatry, he calls us back to himself. And when we fail, he offers grace and forgiveness. The final message of Judges 8 is that we shouldn't place our hope in human heroes. Our hope belongs to the true King who rules forever. Gideon pointed forward to him, but Jesus is the deliverer Israel and all of us truly need. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.